So next up, we have Amy Samson. My introduction to her was at the Minnesota Death Collaborative. One of the things that I really remember about your practice you offered was just the gentle teaching style and skillful instruction. It actually inspired me to study yoga as well. And I think it's so interesting that the practice you offered us really could meet us wherever we were at in that moment. So I look forward to witnessing another experience with you.
Well, thanks for asking me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and my professional background, and then we'll practice a little bit. So my name is Amy Samson, as you've already heard. Let's start with professional, because this work is fed by my professional background, but it's also deeply personal to me. And so I'll tell you it in a quick, because we want to get to the good stuff. But so I'm recently retired from being a physical therapist for about 31 years or so, and so I had this kind of background of healthcare provider. And then about 20 some years ago, I started practicing yoga, and I found that I just started bringing my yoga into my healthcare delivery, and it not only fed me, it fed the patients, and we had a greater, almost kind of a co-creative way of moving through therapy. So eventually, I connected with a gentleman named Matthew Sanford. And some of you may have heard of him. He wrote this book. I'm not going to read from it or talk much about it, but it's a great book. If you haven't read Waking, it's a really, really great book. He was in a car accident when he was 13 years old back in 1979, and became paralyzed from the chest down. After going through a standard rehab model, he decided to try yoga and found that it was a really great way to connect to his body after being really sort of removed from his body in the standard rehab model. So I started working with him. Our specialty is working with people who are living with every possible disability, teaching yoga with them, sharing yoga with them. And we'll talk more about that, but that's in a nutshell. That's kind of where I came from professionally, from this very healthcare centered model to gradually segueing to a place that just really fed my soul. And thank goodness I found Mind Body Solutions, because it allowed me to really make that transition professionally as well. But while all of this was going on, in 2010, my 44-year-old husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Mm-hmm. And like I said, he was 44. We had 2 teenagers. Life was good. We were just plugging away, doing our thing. And 7 months later, we lost him. Mm-hmm. So suddenly, my professional role turned into a deeply personal one. And I was grateful to have a background and a strong yoga practice as I went into this journey for myself, of course, and of course this journey with my husband as he moved toward the end of this life. So one of the instances that helped me realize how powerful yogic practices could be for somebody who's moving toward the end of life was one night. He had been ill for maybe 4 or 5 months at that point, and was having a lot of pain. Pancreatic cancer is a very painful cancer, and it was managed, but it was still painful. And I said, "Hey, do you want to just try some yoga?" Mm-hmm. And we did on the floor, some stuff we'll do today. And he said at one point, and still touches my heart, he said, "I don't have any pain right now." Mm-hmm. Which was like, oh my gosh, as a caregiver, what more do you want? What more can you ask for? To be able to connect at that level was so powerful, and to give him a little bit of relief. was so powerful. So when we talk about yoga, and we ready ourselves for a yoga class, we think of the flowing yoga and the downward facing dogs and all that wonderful stuff that feeds us. And the truth is, it's really fun. I mean, we do it for a reason, because it makes us feel alive and large and wonderful. And at the same time, there was no way he could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I work with who live with really profound disabilities at times, there's no way they can do these yoga poses. And so the question becomes, do they not have a place at the table of yoga because they can't do the poses? And so how do you teach and share the practices of yoga for people who have little or no access to the pose? And that's what we did at Mind Body Solutions. Or we do at Mind Body Solutions, is we teach the inside sensation of the pose. Mm-hmm. So we're less concerned about the physical performance of the pose. And that doesn't mean that we don't do poses, and it doesn't mean our students don't love to get in a trikonasana or a half moon pose that looks very modified, because we do like the poses. They're fun. But at the same time, we de-emphasize dramatically the external manifestation of the pose, and we teach the inside of the pose. So today we're just going to study the inside of some poses. We won't do anything dramatic. So if you're not a yoga practitioner, you're in luck, because you don't have to do much. So that's a very, very good thing. So what we found out way back in 2011, I was talking with Matthew Sanford. I've been director of programs there for a long time. I recently stepped away from that pose to see what else is next for me. But we were getting ready to make a video, and we had all these poses outlined. We're going to do a modified trikonasana. We're going to do a modified, XYZ. And we started recognizing that there was a through line between all of these physical postures. And the through line was, as I said before, the sensations. Mm-hmm. And so we started kind of molding our teaching, rather poses, into teaching sensations. And we teach kind of 4 core sensations, and that's what we're going to practice today. So we have the core sensation of grounding, expansion, balance, and rhythm. And when you start thinking about yoga pose, guess what you're doing in all those yoga poses? You're combining all of this beautiful through line. And if we taught that, wouldn't our students, or those who are moving toward the end of life, wouldn't they get the benefit of yoga without having to do the poses? And so that's what we do, and that's what we're going to practice. And so let's play around with some stuff. All right. Okay. So done with my big speech. Back up here. All right. So if you're comfortable sitting in a chair, come sitting in a chair. Otherwise, stay on the floor. Doesn't make any difference to me. Whatever you're most comfortable with. So as we go through these, I'm going to just name some of these sensations as we go through grounding, expansion, balance, and rhythm. And here's the thing: they're not going to look like anything new to you. You're already doing all of this stuff, but it helps to name it, because it helps you to feel it, and it helps to invite the person that you might be working with. Invites them into, and lets them know that they are practicing yoga, that they do have a seat at the table of yoga, if you will. So let's go ahead and start out by grounding ourselves. And again, none of this is going to look all that odd, because you're doing it already. I like to move to the edge of my chair, but of course, if I was working with somebody who didn't have good balance, I would have them back against the back of their chair. But just sit up straight and tall, wherever you happen to be. Feel free to use the chair or not use the chair. It's up to you. As we move into our practice today, if you'd like to soften your eyes as we begin this, you're welcome to close them, or just simply just sort of direct your gaze downward as we just slowly land here. And so as we move into this practice, first we'll study a little bit of the sensation of grounding. So I want you to feel your feet where they happen to be on the floor. No need to to move them or push into the floor. Just notice the sensation of your feet on the floor. For those of you who are yoga practice, this won't be unfamiliar, but we're giving it a name. We're calling it grounding. Notice where your sitting bones are. Notice where your hands happen to be lying. Maybe put them on your lap. They could be facing up, facing down, whatever feels right for you today. And then just let your body breathe. We'll talk a little bit about breath. And although we teach breath at Mind Body Solutions, we kind of de-emphasize it because a lot of the people that we're working with might have difficulties breathing. And so we don't go right into breath unless we know the folks that we're working with really well. But for our purposes today, go ahead and just take a nice slow breath into these lower outside ribs. Maybe noticing for the first time today your back ribs as you slowly inhale through the nose. And then just let your exhale wash out. So as we move into this, I'm going to call this grounding, just to give it a name. Notice again the sensation of the feet on the floor, the support of the chair underneath your bottom. Maybe you feel the support of the chair against your back. Being able to receive support from the space around you is one of the tenets that we teach with our adaptive students. Let the shoulder blades drift down the back body, balance the head over the top of the shoulders if it feels comfortable, and maybe take one more breath right into those lower outside ribs. It can be this simple. And I always tell my students, when you're preparing for a yoga practice, do the pose going into the pose. So you're already doing yoga even as you're simply setting yourself up. So what does this feel like in the inner body? Gently press down through your feet so you feel the floor just a little bit more. Notice that sensation of grounding. Notice what moves in the body as you press down one way and maybe feel a little bit of sensation somewhere else. There's no right or wrong here. It's just noticing. That's all we're doing. And then slowly release. So we're grounding all the time, aren't we? You've had a busy day, you sit down in your chair, and what do? You're just like, that feels really good. That's the sensation of grounding. Feel free to study that and then maybe be able to share it with others. And so so we'll build on that into a sensation of expansion. And like I said, this doesn't have to be grandiose. Sometimes we want that with yoga. We want things to be grandiose, and you can get as big as you want with yourself or the people that you're working with, but also know that everybody has access to this richness, this rich landscape of the internal part of the body. And giving people access to that, especially as they might be feeling more disconnected, is really powerful. And so although the movement, toward the end of life is an individual journey, it's also a journey that requires company. And if we can be company for the people that we're working with, and then they can be company for us, then it nurtures all of us. And so often, I used to work for Courage Center, and sometimes when we'd have a staff meeting or a care conference, that often got difficult because we had to share some hard truths about folks and what was, where they were going with their care. We would start by grounding ourselves because we knew that we would be better we would show up for each other in a better way if we all started grounding. So we might start the meeting like this. We might start the meeting by putting our hands on a table and everybody grounds together, and then they move forward. Very powerful little practice. And if other people aren't doing it, you can be doing it on your own under the table. Somebody's prattling away and talking. You can be under the table just going, okay, I'm going to feel my feet, feel my hands. I need to be present for this, but I'm also going to set my own boundary, and I'm not going to be taken away with the drama of whatever else might be going on. So we'll keep going. So we want to go into expansion. You know, one of the things that happens with all of us as we age, but also happens with folks who are experiencing grief, suffering, illness, moving toward the end of life, is that our worlds tend to get a little bit smaller. You know, both physically and otherwise, but we move in smaller spaces. Sometimes somebody might be spending much of their time in bed, or much of their time in a using a wheelchair. And so one of the other sensations that we teach is living in larger spaces. Everybody, it is our birthright to live in larger spaces until we don't want to, until we're ready to transition. It's our birthright. We'll just stop right there. So let's go back to grounding. So we're going to ground through our feet. And we'll ground through our hands, do what we did before. All right, now this time we'll go back to our feet. Again, pressing down through the four corners of the feet, or the three corners of the feet, whatever you want to do, pressing through your feet, and then feel that little bit of rise in the chest. And if you don't feel the little bit of rise, relax the feet, and maybe you'll start to feel the fall. A lot of times our students, especially those with spinal cord injuries or those who have been very kind of hunched forward, they don't feel the rise, but they feel the fall. So let's try it again. Let's actually activate our feet a little bit. So lift your toes if you come to the tan, if you're in a position where you can lift your toes here. Now, slowly spread the toes as much as you can, and if the fingers spread also, that's okay. Let the fingers spread too. Lay the toes down long. Let the hands come down long. We've already practiced expansion. We've already practiced living in larger spaces, and it can be that simple. It can be spreading your toes. It can be that simple. Let's bring our hands into a prayer position here, which of course is a typical position, Anjali Mudra, for yoga folks. But now let's go ahead. First of all, we're doing some grounding here, aren't we? We're grounding right at the heart center. We're grounding. So let's go ahead and just clasp our hands here the way that you always clasp, the way that you've clasped for your whole life. And many of you have done this before. And now clasp the other way. And for a lot of people, this feels very foreign. You know, they'll say, it feels like I'm holding somebody else's hand. And, you know, Matthew Sanford always laughs when he does this. He says, you've now doubled the size of your universe, which of course is silly. But at the same time, why don't we clasp our hands this way too? Is this space any less available than this space? Why aren't we living in larger spaces? So simple, but take that in for a moment. And so let's just bring the hands back down here, lift the toes, spread the toes, set the toes down long here, press down through your feet, let that sensation rise up through your chest. Our students love this. Even if there is no physical movement, let that sensation on the inner body lift the chest, whether there's any movement at all. Doesn't matter if there's any movement at all, because the inner body is moving here. And then let's go ahead and play with a little bit of expansion. Let's bring our hands down to the sides. Go ahead and point the fingers and the thumb, you know, just let the hands spread comfortably, pointing the fingers and the thumb out just a little bit. And then let's play with just opening the chest a bit. And so just opening up. What does that feel like across the front of your chest? Now, that's a jailbreak for somebody who spends all day long in this position. It's a jailbreak for us because we spend too much time doing this, don't we? What if we just press down through our feet, let our arms rotate out, lift the chest a little bit, ground down through your sitting bones, and stretch up tall through the top of the head. Now, if it feels good, somebody's already doing it, layer in a little breath. Because you want to take a breath there, don't you? Of course you want to take a breath there. Let the shoulders drop down the back body, though. Soften the jaw. Soften the inside of the mouth. One of the places that we hold so much tension, especially people who are providing care, is in the mouth. So soften the inside of the mouth. Feel this sense of expansion, and then release. and let it back down. Just bring your hands back to the center, go back to grounding. So grounding and expansion kind of exist on this same spectrum, don't they? You're kind of grounding, you're expanding. There's a combination of the two, and it can get as big or as little as you want it to get. So we'll do just a little bit more. And again, I hope that you recognize that as we move into this is a yoga practice. This isn't just range of motion, and it isn't as beautiful as, you know, some of the stuff that we do on the outside, but I would argue that it's equally beautiful on the inside. And that's where we can reach people no matter what their phase of life. All right, so let's go again. We'll do a little bit more this time. We'll make it a little bit more physical, but not a whole lot. So let's go ahead and put our hands out to the sides, on our knees, pressing down through the feet again. Again, feel that little bit of rise on the inner body. Let's take the shoulder blades gently down the back, just releasing them. Balance the head on top of the shoulders as much as you comfortably can. Let's press down through our left foot and slowly just bring your arm up a little bit, because a lot of the folks that you might be working with, they're not going to be able to bring their arm way up here. So let's experience what this feels like. And then slowly release and lower it down. Pressing down through the right side, bringing the right one up any amount or not at all. It's up to you. And then coming on down again. Good. And then this time, let's just take both. So pressing down. So you're moving down, we're moving up. You're moving in two directions at once. You're living in larger spaces. So whatever that looks like, and then maybe it feels good to take it out to the side and press it out and get as big as you possibly can. And then let it just bring it back down. So any kind of practice that allows people to feel all of this space. I mean, this is all of our space to live in. And it is for all of us. And yet we live in this little space a lot of the time, unless we go to class and then we get bigger, you know, and all this stuff. But what if we're living in this space all of the time? And what if we invited those who are living with any kind of challenge, whether it be an illness, or whether they're accompanying somebody and feeling smaller as their world is feeling like it's, might be feeling like it's getting smaller. Helping them live in bigger spaces is a really, really powerful concept. So the other thing, another process that we teach is balance. So grounding, expansion, balance. So we'll talk a little bit about balance, because when we think about balance, especially as a yoga teacher, a yoga student, you think of something like tree pose. You know, you're on one side and you're doing all this teeter-totter balance. Again, what if you're working with folks who don't have access to that kind of pose play? We like to think of balance as equal distribution of presence throughout the body. Mm-hmm. It's a very different way of thinking about balance. So rather than sending somebody who might, let's say one of our folks with CP, or somebody who has trouble with their balance, rather than saying, you know, try and stand on one leg, you know, you're really powerful, feel your power, or whatever. What if we allowed them to feel presence in their body? Mm-hmm. All of their body. And in a way that doesn't create extra pain, but creates a sense of relief. So I kind of think about balance as if we're taking like a dropper full of blue dye and we're putting it in a bathtub. You know, the blue dye doesn't stay there. It spreads throughout. It equally distributes itself. And that's the kind of sensation that we want. I was working with a gentleman who had a bone marrow transplant and had graft versus host disease, and was unfortunately experiencing what one would call scleroderma, or everything was gradually freezing in his body. Mm-hmm. So he had been a big performance athlete, and things were getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and he was losing his feet. He was losing his hands. He just did not have presence in them. And so we practiced a lot of balance. And really that's just living in larger spaces. So let's again get into our position where we started. We'll do a little more balance on the floor, but for here, just go ahead and press down through your feet. Feel the sensation of rising up through your chest, balancing the head over the shoulders, kind of doing the same thing over and over again, but looking at it each time with a different lens. Let's just take our hands down by the sides again. Go ahead and turn the palms out if you feel comfortable doing this. Draw your attention to the palms of your hands, and just imagine a little bit of spinning warmth in the palms of the hands. And then let that just spread out, permeate all the way out through the fingers and the thumbs. Draw your attention to the soles of the feet. Do the same thing as if there's a little warmth in the soles of the feet, and now it just begins to spread out through the toes, out through the heels. So we're connecting parts of the body. We're moving sensation through the body. And then we won't take the time to do it today, but you might start adding other body parts as you slowly begin to encompass all of the body here. Let's just take a deep breath, if that's comfortable for you. Slow inhalation. Let that inhalation nudge the outer and those back ribs. Notice what you feel. And then slowly release it on back down. It's hard to articulate how powerful these little practices are to somebody who feels like they're losing so much. Mm-hmm. And to provide that company and that sensation, that shared sensation between the two of you is just incredibly powerful. So let's look to our last sensation before we move to the floor, and that's rhythm. And, rhythm is innate to us. We're rocked as babies. We rock, we move around. It is part of what we do. And one of the things we too often give up is that sensation of fluid movement. People, I'm using a wheelchair now. I'm not going to dance, or whatever the case may be. Feeling graceful in your body is your birthright. How can we help people to feel that sense of rhythm? And rhythm can be calming and it can be invigorating. And so you have to think about how might you decide to use rhythm. And so let's just get into our starting position again. So we're pressing down, we're expanding up. We're now using grounding. We're expanding up. We're using expansion. We're moving the energy through the body, so we're experiencing that sense of balance or equal distribution of presence. And then let's add just a little bit of rhythm. And so let's just start moving our hands this way. And the addition of rhythm doesn't have to look like a sun salutation. It can look like just moving. And if that feels good, add your shoulders. And if that feels good, maybe you sway a little bit as you're doing it. Helping people and yourself, for Pete's sake, to begin to feel what it's like to move with grace. It doesn't have to be fancy. I tell my students they should do this in the waiting room of their doctor's office. I said, just start doing it. Just start doing it. See what people think. And so we're just moving a little bit. Maybe then we take the hands out to the sides and we bring them up. Maybe we take a deep breath in, maybe we don't, and then we just drop it back. And you all know this. This is, you can do a cat-cow, you can do a kitty-calf, you can move wherever it starts to feel good. We're living in larger spaces. We're moving in ways that feed us and balance that rhythm and giving people access to something that many of them thought they lost. You don't need to lose this. We too easily give that stuff up. And so it becomes fun. We had a gentleman who we lost to ALS, 5 or so years ago. And he was, so just keep moving as I'm chatting away here. He was a professor at St. Thomas, and he did a whole series with Kathy Wurzer on NPR. You may have heard. We worked with him a lot. In fact, we worked with him almost until the day he died. A couple of weeks before he died, we were no longer working with him. But he loved music, loved music. And so we would recline his wheelchair when we came to visit him And we would take his arms and we'd put a chair here and a chair here, and we put his arms out to the sides like this. And he would just love getting bigger in space. And then we put on music and we'd take his arms up like this and we'd just kind of conduct. We'd move with it, and you could just see the tears go down his eyes because he was moving in space. And one of the things that he said in one of our videos was, he said, for just a little while, I get to feel like myself again. And that's the gift. That's why we practice. And as caregivers, this is equally as powerful for caregivers. To share that rhythm with somebody, to share these practices with someone, it not only nurtures them, but it also feeds you. And, boy, talk about grief. Grief is powerful, grief is strong, but letting even a little bit of that percolate as you're moving through the journey with somebody is really, really powerful. And I love that you're holding yourself. What perfect. What does rhythm feel like to you? What is the rhythm that feeds you? And oftentimes we can't be out here. This is too much grief. There's too much out here. There's too much unknown. But here, bring it back to the center. So playing around with whatever type of rhythm is nurturing for you is really, really important. And then let's bring it back to the center and pause. So pause, let your hands just land wherever they comfortably can. Soften your eyes again. What do you feel in your body now? What do you notice? Wouldn't it be great if you could start a session with somebody with even 5 minutes of something like this? Let the body breathe here for another breath or so. And then we'll release. Okay. When do you want me to stop? Because I start a little bit late, but I can go on forever.
We can go till 11:30.
11:30. Yeah. Okay. Where are we at? 11:20. Okay. All right. Because I got a whole lot more to do.
If we run long, the next presentation isn't till 1. We're just going to give a break for lunch.
Okay. I'll try and wrap up in 10-15 minutes. One thing I would love people to try, and we'll do this quickly, is sitting back to back. That's been one of our most powerful tools that we use with folks. Is anybody willing to come up here? Because I know the folks on Zoom. Right on. Okay. All right. So Kate bravely steps up to the front. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And if anybody else would like to try this, find a partner, find a friend, and sit back to back with them. So if you'd like. I know we have an odd number. Oh no, that's no good. Well,
I can practice here and then I can join somebody else.
Okay. Yes. We'll go through these. All right. So think about the power of supporting somebody's spine, supporting somebody's back, having somebody's back. Often we have people sit way up on blankets, but we won't go into all of that today. One time I sat down with a physical therapy client of mine. She had all sorts of aches and pains, and we were, trying to get her stronger and all these things. And what she really needed was company. Mm-hmm. And one time I said, let's just sit on the floor and sit back to back. And when we did that, she just melted. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, that feels so good. But sometimes providing that sense of company with someone is difficult because it's eye to eye. So what if you just supported their heart from the back? What if you just supported their spine and their back body from the back? And it can be really, really nurturing for folks. And again, there's this giving and receiving here, isn't there? Mm-hmm. All right, Kate, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and go together. So okay. you can move over there. I'll show. So folks on Zoom, you can pretend I've got somebody here. And it also can be playful. So part of this too is bringing in a little bit of playfulness. So if you are comfortable doing so with your partner, reach behind and hook elbows. Oh. Or wrists or whatever. Oh. This one can be kind of challenging. and then just kind of start moving together. Maybe just move back and forth or side to side together. Just start moving. And it can be playful, can it? Rhythm can be playful. So yeah, go in some circles. You guys go in some circles. That's good. So do a little bit of circles. And then make sure you do some circles to the other way. Again, we won't go really long into this, but playing with this is really great. And then put your hands out long. So your hands kind of touch and your arms are long. And then do a nice side bend.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And feel free to grunt and groan a little bit. Most of the time it's like, oh, I didn't know I needed this, right? So you just play a little bit of that. And then, then maybe a little bit of sea turtles. We call this sea turtles. We did a great program with kids at Gillette Children's Hospital.
Oh.
And one of the patients at Gillette said, oh, this is like a sea turtle. Yes, oh, you're brilliant. And let's go the other way.
I can't see her, so I'm trying to just
From the mouth to face. I know, it's kind of strange and it's kind of weird and it's kind of beautiful. Now let go. And just bring your hands back around to your lap. Support your friend. And we'll do this other part very, very quickly because we want to make sure we have time to get some other stuff. So whoever had their hands or their arms on top now has their arms on the bottom. And it'll feel very, very different. It'll feel very different than before.
There we go.
And then let's do it again. So just kind of fall backward and forward or circles or whatever you decide to do. When we used to do this in trainings way back when, before the pandemic, when we had lots of in-person trainings,
Could actually touch.
it would get yeah, exactly. It would get so loud in the room. We had to yell for people to be quiet because people started giggling. It was just fun. It brings out the joy in movement. And then let's go ahead and just take that nice long lean from side to side to open up the side body. Just back and forth from side to side. Let that side body open. It does feel good, doesn't it? And then take a few sea turtles and recognize as we're doing this, all the you guys alternate. Yeah, there you go. That was a new one though. I like that. That's kind of and make sure you go the other direction too. But what's lovely about that is it sort of encompasses all of the movements, doesn't it? And go ahead and release now. Bring your hands back around toward the front. Keep your back to back for the moment. Just support your friend, have them support you. And now move just a tiny bit apart, maybe just an inch apart. Okay, so you're not completely separated. You've got a little bit of space there that's still connecting you. You can still feel your partner, can't you? You can still feel that sensation of warmth between the two of you. That's what you need to conjure in times that are tough. Somebody supporting the back body. And then slowly move a little further away, and it gets a little colder, and you kind of miss your buddy. And and this is a good one. This is a good one to do for caregivers, because caregivers often kind of suck at receiving, to be honest with you. We're not great at receiving. And so this is kind of a nice way to receive and give at the same time and not have that eye contact. And so it's a really nice thing to teach caregivers and people who are living with illness. It's a great thing to do with them. And you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with them. You're providing company. And if you've got somebody who will touch your back afterwards, it's even better. Then everything just opens up, and it's lovely. All right. In the interest of moving along, I will invite you to go back to your mat, and let's go ahead and lie down. So go ahead and lie down. Take whatever you need for a pillow. Most of you have a blanket, so take whatever works for you, whatever you need. And let's go ahead and start. We'll go through just a couple different things, and then we'll do a tiny shavasana, and then we'll be done. But so as I do this, and I know that you're getting the gist of this, is I'm just repeating that through line over and over. I'm going to grounding, let yourself receive the support of the floor. So as you land on the floor, and if you're not comfortable being on the floor, you don't need to come down to the floor. But if wherever you are, let yourself receive the support of the floor and the earth below. Let that be a mind-body sensation. Notice where you're still holding. Again, often it's in our jaw, it's in our mouth area. See if you can just let that go, just even if it's just for a couple of breaths. Because if that's your pattern, and for most of us, including me, it is, it'll tighten back up. But part of it, as we know, is just noticing. Just noticing. So this is a sensation of grounding. It's a sensation of safety. What are the words that we might use to describe grounding? It might be calming, it might be safety, it might be company. So if this is a position you're comfortable in, and of course not everybody's comfortable in this position, but if it is, let the floor support your body. Let this community support you as we practice in this, because company is good. Even though every single one of our journeys is individual, they're also communal. And so let yourself be supported by this community, by this sensation of the floor underneath your heels, underneath your bottom, underneath your hands or your wrists, or whatever you feel in contact. But let's add a little bit of movement, because you're going to get sleepy here. So bring your legs together if you comfortably can. So they're, they don't have to be touching or anything, just a little more toward the midline. So you begin to feel that sense of midline. And for those of you who are yoga practitioners, you know how powerful it is to feel that sense of midline, especially when things are kind of going in every direction in your life. The ability to come back to the midline is very powerful. So gently, let's go ahead and activate the feet. So draw the toes up toward the face, press out through the heels as you bring just a little bit more definition into this. So we practice grounding, and now we're going to bring a little expansion into it, aren't we? So take your right arm and slowly begin bringing it over your head, any amount. It can go a little bit, it can go way over your head, whatever feels right for you now. So do what feels right for you here. And stretch it over your head, almost as if your shoulder blade is going to just rise right out of your arm, pressing toward the wall beyond the head, and then bring it back down. And this was the practice I taught my husband. It was literally this simple. And let's take the other side and just slowly bringing the arms over the head. Yeah, you might run into some stuff here, but do what you can. Coming over the head again. So we're working on grounding and expansion now. You can call it anything you want. You can call it Ardha Urdhva Hastasana. If you want to use a yoga term, that's fine. Or you can just call it putting your arm over your head and then bring it back down. But now let's work even more in expansion and moving in two directions at once. So now press out with that active right foot with your heel. Press out with the heel. There you go. Out with the heel, making that leg longer. Now add the right arm to it. Over the head. Get as long as you can on the right side of the body. Take up all of that space. Maybe the breath is layered in, maybe it's not. You have to decide who you're working with and where you are that day. Sometimes the breath can be really triggering, and it's not a place where we want to take people. And then slowly release. Okay, so we're moving in larger spaces. We're moving in two directions at once. Let's do the same thing on the left side. So pressing out with that left heel, slowly bringing the arm over the head. You're finding your edges. Find the edges. Don't melt into the bedclothes. Help define your body. And then slowly relax down. Often folks who are wheelchair users who spend a lot of time in bed, they'll say they feel like they're just melting into the bedclothes. They're just melting into their wheelchair cushion. And they want to define their boundaries. And this is a really nice way of doing that. If it feels good, bend your knees, put your feet flat on the mat. Here, let's take our arms out to the side with palms facing up if you feel comfortable. This is wide open here. If this is too wide open, then feel free to take your hands, put your elbows on the floor, and bring the hands to the center so you give yourself some grounding. You decide what feels right for you today. And if it feels good to move in a little more space, then slowly just start taking the knees from side to side. Again, there's nothing fancy about this. Keep it slow, keep it low amplitude. Doesn't have to be big unless that feels good for your body today. So decide and remember, do not be attached to the bigness of the pose. Let your body feel these really sweet, subtle sensations here. And of course, you can add any kind of, you could bring a knee to the chest. You could do some other different types of rotation. All sorts of things can go here. But recognizing it can be really, really simple. Because all we're doing is just working with that inner body, allowing for the beauty of that richness of that inner landscape to step forward that exists in every single one of us, no matter where we are on the arc of life. And then come back to the center. Be in the center. Don't be in a hurry to go to what's next. Just feel what you noticed. Feel your body here. Let your body release toward the floor if that feels okay. Soften the inside of the mouth again. It may have gotten hard. And if you're comfortable doing so, go ahead and take your arms and your legs a little wider. They could be really, really wide, or they could be just a little bit wide. This one, again, is really powerful for folks who are spending most of their time in bed. And they feel like they're getting smaller and smaller and just moving into the bed linens. Feel everything now. Slowly begin to uncurl your fingers and open the palms and the fingers wide, just maybe for a breath or so. And then let them curl naturally. And then maybe push out through the heels a little bit, pressing out through the heels and pulling the toes back so you begin to feel the outer edges of the body. Once again, receive that sensation of grounding through the floor, through the earth. Experience the sensation of expansion as you move away from the midline and take up all of the space that's yours. Feel the sensation of balance as we've kind of redistributed sensation all throughout the body, haven't we? Pushing it out through the feet. We're feeling it in the hands. And then we played with rhythm. We did some rotation. You could, play with the hands here. There's all sorts of rhythmic things, of course, that you could do here. Yeah, wiggling the fingers and the toes, finding your edges. All of that. All of that. And then gently just walk the feet a little closer together. They don't have to be real close, but we'll take just like a 1-minute Shavasana just to finish out today. Arms can be out to the side any amount, or again, if you need a little more grounding, put your elbows on the floor and then let the hands gently come to lie on the ribs or the belly or wherever they naturally do. Giving yourself that tactile reference. And then no effort here. No effort. Recognizing again the support of the floor, the support of the earth, the support of this community. Maybe a little bit of gratitude offered up for the tools that we have, the practices that we have to help us feel a little bit more present in our bodies. Maybe those tools that offer a little bit of relief when it seems like nothing else will. And then let's slowly and sadly come out of Shavasana. I know that was painfully short. Go ahead and blink the eyes open and closed. Feel the edges in whatever way feels good for you, maybe moving the hands or the feet. And as you're ready, bend one knee, roll over to the side. Take a little pause there. And then slowly working your way up into any comfortable seated position. Or staying in Shavasana, if that feels better. That's fine with me. A lot of my students don't. It takes them, it's too much effort to come out of Shavasana. So wherever position you're in, bringing your hands together as we end our practice, as always, with Namaste. Thank you for sharing in this. I've gone over time, so I'm here to answer questions, but I also know that we want to be respectful of all of your time. So if you have any questions or anything to discuss, otherwise you can go to lunch and love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure to share some of these. And they're very simple practices. It doesn't need to be any more complex than that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My dad died from ALS, and I think about how this would have been so wholesome for him.
It would have. Yes. Yeah. And it's there's a regret there, and I'm sure you were very present with him. But we found it particularly effective in folks with ALS. There's one. Can I tell one quick story?
Yeah.
Okay, one very quick story. One of the ways that we use rhythm with some of our folks at ALS, with ALS, is to just roll their legs, which is such an interesting thing. And I had a client and her husband, and going to bed was a really stressful time for her. She was afraid that she would not wake up, that she would stop breathing in the middle of the night and she would not wake up. And so going to bed every night was a great time of anxiety. So we taught her husband, who was just a hooch. He's one of my yoga students still today. I just adore him. Taught him, he would come to her bed and he would just start rolling her legs. Rhythm. Sure. Well, yeah, you just want that. Kate's like, would you like to do that to me? So go ahead and let your legs come down. And he would come and he would just start. And I don't mean rolling her legs. I mean, just a little bit of rhythm. And, I said, go ahead and do it for, whatever you want, a minute or so. You two might be talking, you might not be, it might be quiet. Well, he was an engineer and he was very precise. And so he said, I do it 100 times on each leg. Wow, that seems like a lot, but okay. And so he would do this. And by the time, I normally go around to the other side, but I'll just do it here. By the time he would finish, she was almost always asleep. And so he just gently rocked her to sleep. But the cool thing about it, thanks, Kate. The cool thing about it was that what he said to me afterwards, he said, not only does it help her sleep, but it helps me sleep. And he said, by the time I'm done with 100 on each side, she's out. And he said, then I can just go over to my bed, which was on the other side of the bedroom, and fall asleep. And so again, it was so powerful. There was this giving and receiving that was taking place the whole time. And it was just using gentle rhythm. Yeah. So one of the great ways that we've used this with our folks with ALS and of course other conditions as well.
I think the interesting thing I noticed as you were rocking me is it's a gentle movement on the hips too, which can hold so many emotions.
Absolutely.
It was very peaceful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a nice thing. Absolutely. Thank you for volunteering. Wise person.
I'm just dealing with therapy.
Wise person who volunteers. Yes.
Any other
Comments, questions? Otherwise, you are free to go to lunch.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Amy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
And I took your brochure because I've got some estate planning to do. So